So on Sunday, it's going to be the birthday of the late great Eddie Van Halen. And whenever there's a Van Halen subject, we always try to get some of our guys that are out there and doing stuff with Eddie. And today we got Johnny Beane. Johnny's running the Johnny Beane TV. He has exclusive Van Halen. He's a fanatic like us. Johnny, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Johnny Beane TV. What is this? Tell us about it.
Uh, Basically, it started out being like vlogs, just like daily vlogging of here, I'm eating a sandwich or I'm taking out the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And then it basically went from that to like a talk show, I guess, talking different stuff. The reason I do exclusively Van Halen is because I grew up listening to nothing but Van Halen. That was
Mm-hmm.
it for me. And as a musician, yeah, not really a good idea. I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. There was only one Eddie, so you know, but uh basically so what I do, it went from vlogging to like Van Halen, like guitar stuff, because I'm a musician. And eventually I started doing just talk shows, and I do a few different ones. I do different things. I do a lot of guitar stuff, but since I know a lot about Van Halen, that's, something that I enjoy talking about.
That's how I came upon you, through this great worldwide net. I ran
Hmm.
across you on a Saturday night. You're a Saturday Night Live show. It's a variety show, comedy, talking guitars. And actually, I think the episode I got really involved, I think you're doing Van Halen trivia. And I'm like, hey, these guys are all right because, it was fun. So tell us about
Hmm.
Saturday Night Live. And that's not the name. What is the name of your Saturday night show?
Straturday. Straturday night, as in like Stratocaster, like the
Okay.
guitar. That's just something, just like I said, started doing live shows. I've been doing my live show for about 10 years, which is pretty crazy to think about. But I basically just started doing like it started really started with the Van Halen thing. Doing like EVH guitar chats, talk about a specific guitar, a specific uh piece of music or whatever. And then it kind of branched out from there, doing weekly shows, and like the Saturday night, doing something. I thought, oh, Saturday night, it's cool. Yeah, it's just hanging out, talking, basically talking whatever. But a lot of my audience is really there for the guitar stuff, for the music stuff, and being a musician for a lot of years, I can talk about the music stuff, behind the scenes. I was signed years ago, so I've toured, so I can talk about a lot of that stuff, and
So
that's
the origins, I take it, is in, the inside guitars, the playing, you and your guitar geeks get geek out on tones and this and that.
yeah,
Let me ask you,
yeah.
when did you fall in love with Van Halen?
I first saw Van Halen, I think it was in 1984. I saw the music videos, Panama, Jump, Hot for Teacher. Thought the videos were funny. Didn't really, I didn't buy any of the albums. I wasn't really a fan then, but it was when I saw the movie Back to the Future. There's that scene where Marty McFly pulls out the cassette tape. It says Edward Van Halen on it. He pressed play on that. I heard that and I'm like, wow, that I got to find out more about this. And then it turns out the next Van Halen record to be released after that was 5150, in 1986. So I bought that. I chose that over Eat 'em and Smile. Don't tell anybody, okay? This isn't going on the internet, is it? So anyway, uh yeah, Van Hagar really was the first thing, but the second Van Halen album I bought after that was the first album. So I really grew up on both eras. It was always about Eddie Van Halen to me. Still is. I run a Facebook group called exclusively Van Halen, and it's just nonstop, which singer is better, whatever. And it's, if people want to talk about that all day long, every day, that's fine. I mean, it gives them something to do. It's great. But me personally, I love all of it. I have no problem. And Edward Van Halen really, really is the uh, greatest guitarist ever, you know.
Oh, I'm with you. There's definitely a border skirmish. Now, Johnny, I'm 57 years old. How old are you?
I'm actually 50. I kind of joke around about my age a lot because people don't have no idea how old I am. Some people think I'm 29, some people think I don't know, 58, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm actually 50.
Oh yeah, Johnny, there's definitely a border skirmish between Dave and Sam and that whole deal. But I do agree with you on
Yeah.
one thing. I subscribe to that it's all Eddie, Ed and Alex throughout the entire catalog. But the first time I heard Van Halen was from my older brother in 1978. And so I was on board from then. My late father, God rest his soul, would not allow me to go to any concerts until I was 13. So I watched my brother and his buddies drive away to go see the Van Halen 2 and Women and Children First shows. And I had a chance to see him for the first time on Fair Warning. And so I saw the last three Roth
Oh,
tours.
cool.
Yeah. And then throughout the entire Sammy era, Dave era, multiple tours, drove around. So I think, I don't know, last time maybe I've seen Van Halen in the 30s, high 30s, and there's people that dwarf me. But so uh I'm a fan of the entire band, but I would side with Dave. But I grew up on that. You got into them,
Hmm.
eat them or 84. So that's your
5150.
yeah, 5150. Um so
It's yeah.
go ahead.
It's really it's whenever you first got into it, that will always be like the special place. For me, it's 5150 era, 0812 era. That's when I was first really discovering them. But like I said, I went back, bought every record, before that, continued on throughout the 90s. I was a huge Van Halen collector for a lot of years, and unfortunately, I sold most everything like 20 years ago. But I had everything. So that again, that's one of the reasons why
Everything.
I
What's everything? You had everything. What would you
oh,
have?
every magazine cover you can think of
Mhm.
that you see on the internet, like, oh man, I wish I had that. I had that. Every single, every 45, every LP, posters, every kind of every piece of memorabilia, pretty much up until uh yeah, about 20 years ago, I guess, you know.
It got different. It got overabundancy of stuff and what do you collect? And I still in my basement still have all those hit paraders,
Hmm.
circus, all that
Hmm.
stuff from back in the day. I still even have the Roth Women and Children First fence fence poster.
Hmm.
It's
I have 20 of those. I don't have them on my wall, but I
yeah,
have several. Yeah.
yeah. Come on, you only need one.
Every
Let me ask
time,
you.
yeah, every time I would find that album and it had the poster in it, I would buy it because I knew it was somewhat collectible. I
Yeah,
because it wasn't in every copy. I mean, I think Roth has said there was like a million of them, which that sounds like a lot, but really when you collect stuff, it's really not because a lot of that stuff people put on their walls back then, a lot of the stuff got destroyed, you know, and it's kind of rare these days to go into a record shop and find one of those, really. So, like I said,
yeah.
about 25 years ago, 30 actually, what year is this? 2020. Oh my gosh. About 30 years ago, well, that would have been Balance era. Yeah, I was still a huge collector at that point and living out here in the Bay Area, we have amazing record shops, memorabilia shops out here. And so, like I said, I had everything. Every time I would go out, I would buy anything Van Halen I could find,
Hmm.
whether it be the LPs, multiple copies of the LPs. I've actually given a lot of the LPs away on my show. I still have like probably like 100 copies on vinyl. Every once in a while, I'll do a giveaway and you know give one away. But yeah, magazines.
Comic books, got the
Um,
comic books.
I think I still have the comic books. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I bought some of those back in the day. I used to, well, my collection was collecting it as it was coming out.
Hmm.
Um, the I still have the Fair Warning tour program, 1984
Hmm.
tour program, the originals. And Johnny, I wish I still had a lot of those posters that I used to have, but I don't. And it goes for all the other bands. I wish I still had all the concert shirts. What are you gonna do? You grow up, you don't think about it. But one of my most prized possessions, and you can consider it rare, is the Starfleet, the original Starfleet project
Yep.
pressing. And I remember when that came out, rode my bicycle down to the local record shop to get that. And that's a prized possession. Probably my ticket stubs and my concert shirts that I do have. That's what means a lot to me. But enough of the
Hmm.
memorabilia. Let me ask you. So you're a Sammy guy. What's your interpretation of the Roth stuff? Seeing that, I grew up on that and I was able to go both sides. What was it about the Sammy, and what did you really like about the Roth stuff?
Uh, well, my first, like I said, the first time I ever saw or heard Van Halen would have been in 1984. It would have been the videos, Panama, Jump, Hot for Teacher, I thought the videos were funny. I liked the music. Um, but like I said, it wasn't until 5150 came out. I bought that and dug back, I had a paper route, and so I would save up my money and I would go to this record shop. At the time I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I would go to this record shop called Pickles. And actually, a friend of mine actually ran an independent record shop. It was called Backtrack Records, and he actually would save everything Van Halen for me. Like I would walk in there, and this is about 1988, 89, 90. I would walk in there, and if he got something in, he would save it behind the counter and be like, "Hey, Johnny, check this out. Do you want this?" And most times I'd be like, "Yeah." So, but like I said, dug back, bought the older stuff, and when you're a kid, even though it was 19, let's say 1986, 5150 is the brand new one. I bought the first record after that, and you're a kid. That first album is old. 1978 to 1986. Now those numbers, that's not a big deal. Then huge difference. I remember looking at the back of those albums. I remember looking at the back of Diver Down and thinking, man, that was even though it was only like five years or something, it was a long time to me, you know.
Yeah, I get what
But
you're saying.
yeah,
When you're 16, well, how old were you then? Were you 16? How old were you when you got into them?
when
Do
I
the
got
math.
into them, I was 12.
12. Okay. So you're 12. You're growing up. So, 6 months seemed like a long time ago. And so,
An hour was like a long time back then. Now it's like nothing.
well, as you matured and yeah, and you've grown up, and even to this day, can you decipher? Can you go back and listen to that other stuff and say, hey, there's really a difference here? This
Hmm.
is something that is magical that the Hagar era doesn't possess, or do you not feel that way?
Uh, Growing up, the thing is, I was a major Van Halen fanatic, and it took me a long time to admit that publicly, like on the internet. I always kind of dumbed it down, and because I would have, other people on my shows, and we would talk Van Halen, and I would just kind of let them, say whatever. But if there was misinformation, I would chime in and be like, no, this is actually, this was that, whatever. But as a kid, I was such a Van Halen just fan, and my first concert was 1988, November 5th, 1988, Lincoln, Nebraska, 0812 Winter Tour. Saw them on that. It was unbelievable. Saw them on every tour after that, multiple nights, especially living out here. Van Halen would play 2, 3 nights in a row, um, pretty much every tour. So, but, uh, but yeah, is there a difference between the music of 5150 and Van Halen 1? Oh yeah, there's a major difference. Two totally different bands, even though just one member is different. Two total different things. I totally get it. I totally understand somebody that got into them in 1978 and may have stopped in 1986. I totally understand why, that could maybe why. But like I said, as a musician growing up, you start to look at things differently as far as like music and the music business and how things are. And I would say for me, just I hope I'm answering your question as a I guess as a person, I guess when I met him, I met Edward, and when I met him, it totally changed everything for me as far as being a fan. And I totally look at stuff totally differently now than I did when I was 14. Total different. Like if I could tell my 14-year-old self, what it'll be like in the year 2025, I mean it you know,
What's different? What happened after you met Edward that changed everything? You went from fan to contemporary, or how did it change?
I went from fan to like I just realized that he's just a regular person.
Hmm.
He was just a regular dude. He just happened to look like this guy that we, would buy the magazines of. He was on MTV. We would see him, we all wanted to be him. But when I met him, everything just changed. It was like, oh, he's just a regular guy, human being, you know. Um,
Where'd you
and
meet him, and what was that situation like?
I met him at a private party in Hollywood. A friend of mine invited me to a party, and he was there. And I could have met him like 2 or 3 other times, and I didn't. And I now it's like, man, I wish I would have gone. I was invited to a bunch of parties that he was at. Um, and so
What year was that you met him?
that was 2014.
Okay, so that
So
was,
it was 9 years, 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
yeah, he was at a real good
I don't know.
place in 2014. Oh,
It was
well,
20.
sobriety wise.
It was right before. Yeah, it was before. Well, obviously before the 2015 tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was right. It was right before that, and I don't know. I think maybe it's kind of a weird. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you can relate. Doing these shows, doing these types of things where you're like a talk show host and you meet a lot of people. You realize people are just people. Everybody's
Mhm.
normal. Everybody's the same.
Yeah.
And whether you meet, either somebody that's some huge rock star and they're either a jerk or they're like super chill, like normal or nice or whatever. It just I don't know. That might be a part of it, you know?
No, sure. And you're right. In this platform, I've been meeting, and even before this, been meeting sports heroes, rock idols for
Hmm.
years. And it's, one of my favorite is Dan Marino. And the first time I met him, I was hiding in the bushes outside this Holiday Inn as he was coming in to do a private card show signing. We jumped out of the bushes. He invited us in, and we ended up hanging out with him for 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of stuff. This October, we went down to New York for the Alex Van Halen book signing in Barnes and Noble.
Uh-huh.
And so when we finally went into the area to meet him, and it was my turn to go up there, I extended my hand and I instantly broke the ice. And I was like, Al, you've been waiting a long time for this meeting. And so, and he laughed and he gave me like a little bear hug. And so you were able to ask him one question. So I said
Mm-hmm.
to him, I go, listen, I know this is asking a lot. And, I got a boisterous personality. I made him feel at ease. And I said, all right, it was 1982, David Lee Roth's birthday, Carrier Dome. The crew brought out a big cake and you smothered Dave with it. And after you did the happy trails, you made your way back to the drum kit and you slipped on the frosting and bopped your head. Do you have any recollection of that? He's like, oh, it's a lot of tours. It was a lot of beers and a lot of gigs. He goes, was that the show with Ted? I go, Ted? He goes, yeah, Nugent. I'm like, no, Al, that was in the 70s. He goes, no, I don't remember it, but those were some good times. And then he gave that Alex that boisterous laugh he has. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a matter of yeah, he's just a normal guy. They're all just normal guys. The closest I had to meeting Eddie Van Halen was in the early 90s. He was good friends with Jim Kelly of the Buffalo Bills.
Mm-hmm.
And we're up here in Rochester. And Jim at the time used to have the benefit softball games for his son Hunter. And so Eddie would come up. And I remember I never met him, Johnny, but I was within 5 feet of him. And he's just, he's a little guy. And I don't know if he's, 1993 could have been a bad point of him, bad time for him. But, I've watched more than enough videos and consuming Eddie for years, but I never had a chance to meet him. And I wish I did. But Alex, and so the only one time you only met him the one time. And how did you almost had a chance to meet him other times? What happened then?
I was invited to other events that he was at, and I didn't go just because of probably because of traveling reasons or just scheduling, But there was a period of a few years where I could have met him a handful of times, and it was always like, oh, I'll next time, next time, and so it was only the one time, but uh, but when I met him, I just I had a mutual friend introduce us, and I just said, hey, I'm kind of a fan. And we just chatted for a little bit. We took some selfies. His wife took a photo of us and just kind of chat, Like I said, I realized he's just a normal dude. And even though, I spent years and years and years collecting everything I could find with this guy's image on it or his guitar playing, whatever, at the end of the day, just normal dude.
Yeah.
So it was about a week later. I was sitting in the car at a stoplight, and it hit me, like I met him. Like all of a sudden, it hits you, like, oh yeah, I met him. It's like, oh, you know, start to
Yeah.
have a panic attack. It's like I said, if I could tell, myself back when I was 12, 13, what would happen in the future as far as being a Van Halen fan, for me personally, it would have been unbelievable. Because, like you said, you saw him in 1993 or something, right?
Yeah.
That would have been a period for me where I was a fanatic. Like, there's no way. Like, if I would have met him, it would have been just,
Oh,
I wouldn't have been able
fanboy.
to talk at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
good thing
Incredible.
you didn't then. We're talking with Johnny Beane from Johnny Beane TV, exclusive Van Halen, lifelong Van Halen fan, lifelong guitar player. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have Eddie.Ilan Fong from the What's Hot in the Strip Club podcast. He's joining us today, and we're going to talk with Johnny and Eddie.Ilan about more Van Halen stuff. I'm the Vernomatic. This is Metal Mayhem ROC. We'll be right back. Elon, what's going on, buddy? How you been?
What? Oh, John, man, always great to come on and especially to talk about my favorite band, Van Halen. So, he got me into music. Van Halen's what got my love for music started.
I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Johnny Beane. Johnny, Elon.
Hey, good to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you, Johnny. Love your show, man. Everything Van Halen. What a great concept. You put up so much content, it's crazy. I learned stuff already today. I was checking you out when I found out about who you were. So I already subscribed. I can't wait to dig in deeper.
Cool. Thank you so much. Same here, man. I followed you on Instagram and yeah, yeah. Looking forward to talking more.
For
Well, it's
sure.
nice when us creators could get together and there's a common thread, Eddie Van Halen and all that. Elon, why don't you quickly tell Johnny what your platform is?
Yeah, so I was a strip club DJ, award-winning strip club DJ for like 25 years. I won DJ of the year for the whole industry in 2016. And we started a DJ group called Panda, Professional Adult Nightclub DJ Association, which when I joined it had about 100 members. We're up to over 1,300 strip club DJs around the country and around the world. They send me a chart every month, and then we create the strip club, the Panda Top 20 every month. And then so we do that countdown show. We do a show called Bubbling Under, which has the 10, 12 songs that just missed out in our top 20. We do a show called Panda Off the Charts, where myself, Danny Myers, the host and creator of the shows of all the podcasts. He's been doing it 10 years. I've been doing it 8 or 9. And Bob Chiappardi, you might know that name. He used to do the Foundations Forum. He's a major record promoter. He's worked with everyone from Metallica to Ozzy to Extreme, Alice in Chains, all that stuff, right? And
Hmm.
he created stripjointsmusic.com to get to be a liaison between getting artist music into strip clubs because it's a great demographic for musicians. So out of that, he brings us artist interview. We've interviewed Josh Todd. We've interviewed um, Gavin Rosdale, Major Lazer, Megadeth, the Struts, on and on and on and on and on. Hip hop, R&B, country artists, everybody, every genre has played in strip clubs. Less rock anymore, but but a little bit of everything. So we kind of cover a bunch of areas, what I'm saying. And then I do an interview
Hmm.
show called Behind the Curtain where we do one-on-one, and we're trying to expand outside the music or outside of the strip club world. And so I interviewed Steve Rosen and Darren Paltrowitz about Eddie and David Lee Roth, their books.
Hmm.
Bumblefoot is a friend of mine, so he came on the show. And the shows are really about music. I mean, occasionally there's a stripper story here and there, but 90% of it's all music. So
Elon, you talked about Johnny and his content right off the bat. Johnny, talk about this. You had a correspondent over at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame talking about the new Eddie Van Halen guitar that was introduced there. How did something like that happen?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, that was yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. A friend of mine, his name's Ron Gunner. He does some of these shows with me, and he just happens to live like a couple hours away from there. So he drove over there yesterday, and we went live right there, right from the exhibit,
wow.
just checking out the guitars and just the whole scene. And so it was awesome.
Have you ever been up there, Johnny, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No,
It
not
is
yet.
amazing. I was there, God, probably 20 years ago now when it first opened. It's funny because I've been talking to my neighbor and we're like, we got to go up, we got to go up. And now that I know about the Van Halen little tribute, I'm definitely going to have to go up this year. So I'll report back to you.
Cool.
I was there about 5 years ago, and it's all that,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
take away your opinion of, the people inducted. It's awesome, looking at Michael Jackson's glove to the Stones 1975 tour outfit to
Yeah.
um Cliff Burton's bass from Kill 'Em All. Just really good stuff. But Elon, your courtship with Van Halen, when did you
Mhm.
get into him? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? And I had an older sister who's like 5 years older than me. So I was 8 when Van Halen 1 came out. And the little 8-year-old me is walking around. Of course, she's the older sister. So she had a record player in her bedroom. And my brother and I, who's 3 years older, didn't have our own record players. So she had the record player, but her door was always closed. One day I'm walking by her room and I hear, bum, ding, down, bum, bum. And my little 8-year-old ears went, what? You know, goosebumps. My loins, I became a man in that moment. My loins tingled. I got my first little baby chub. I was like, what is that? And then you hear David Lee Roth hell screams. I'm like, what's going on in there? And man, ever since then, it was just mind blowing. I think I asked my sister, you know, who it was, and I didn't dive in deep, but I just kept hearing a little bit here and there. And then over the next 2 or 3 years, other friends would talk about their big brother. Of course, everyone was into Kiss at first, and they didn't impress me. I'll be honest. I know I piss off all the Kiss people because I saw the makeup and I heard, you know, in Satan's Service, and I thought, oh my God. And then I finally heard them later, and they were pop. They were so soft. But I'd already heard Van Halen at this point. Running with the Devil was way heavier, and they were talking about the devil. And I was like, what is, no, get the makeup away from me. I want to see the real deal. So Van Halen, it changed my life. That's all I can say. And then once I saw Roth and I was in martial arts. I'm half Chinese, right? So I connected to Eddie and Alex because I could tell they were like me somewhat. So I think there's a big part of that. And then connecting with Roth on the martial arts and his stage performance. And between that and music, it was over.
Well, Johnny got into Van Halen as a 12-year-old when 5150 came out. You know,
Okay,
he saw
great
Fear of
album.
the 84. And so, and we're not here to judge, but, you know, his era is the Van Hagar stuff.
Got it.
So the Roth stuff, Johnny, let me ask you, Elon brought that up. What'd you think of Dave doing all the stuff that he did? Because, you know, 30, 40 years later, even though I'm a prophet of that era and like, you know, that was great, it is a little cringeworthy now. So could you ever appreciate some of the Roth stuff, what he was doing back then?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like I said, I first became aware of them in 1984 with the music videos, Jump.
Mm-hmm.
You know, literally, he's jumping around. Panama, they're swinging across the stage.
Yeah.
Hot for Teacher. You know, that video is just crazy, you know. So I thought the videos were funny. I thought he was great. Um, and then, like I said, you know, I grew up on both eras,
Okay.
but it just happened to be when I got into them, they were Van Hagar. And so every tour I could go to was Van Hagar.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then I think during some of those years when Roth was touring, I really don't remember him coming around, at least where I was at the time on his tours.
Where were you?
I was in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, Lord.
At first. Oh, it was horrible. Yeah. But even when I came, by the time I got out here, I moved out here in 92.
Okay.
And so oh, by the way, I was really into Skyscraper. I really dug that album. Steve Vai, huge fan of Steve Vai.
Yeah,
or a van. That's fine.
You know, a huge van
With the painted stallion on, you know, on the side of your scalp. Yeah.
I love Steve Vai. Steve Vai was, and he's another one of those dude. You know, Eddie Van Halen, so special. Steve Vai, you know, both those guys, just so unique. That's what makes them one of the things that makes them incredible. But what I think about Dave Lee Roth, I thought he was great. Let me think. I never saw him solo. First time I saw him would have been with Van Halen, I think, in 07.
07, 08. Yeah.
I think. I'm trying
Well,
to
you
remember.
saw a very pale version of him then.
Yeah, well, it was a
07.
different band. You know, it was, you know, when he left the band, let's admit it, he was in the band essentially really 12 years, but the last, you know, it was really like a 10-year period.
Sure.
You know, 76 to 85. Even though he joined the band earlier than that, they really gained momentum after the, you know, the Simmons Zero sessions, and they got signed, and they had that first Van Halen 1 through 1984 was album tour.
Yeah.
And as someone that was there, and, you know, it was every year, the guys, they used to come to Rochester every single May.
It's
It
awesome.
was like the album would come out in the spring. They'd have the Rochester tour stop in May, and it was those albums, and that was a soundtrack to summer.
Yeah.
And to this day,
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting in bed waiting because the radio DJ said we're going to be playing the new Van Halen. It was Dancing in the Streets. And I
Nice.
remember sitting there waiting for it, and I fell asleep. And I remember I woke up to, the beginning of the song, and it was just, to this day, it just screams Van Halen. And that's the Van Halen that I remember. Johnny, earlier you said some people, when Sammy came in the band, I don't remember that wasn't my band. Well, it wasn't. It was a different band. It was still Eddie. It was still Mike. It was still Alex. But, people give Sam a hard time, like, oh, you changed the band. It's like, no. First of all, this is my take why the band changed. And maybe you guys could interject. They changed when they left Sunset Sound, and they went on to a different board. Eddie started with the 5150 studio, and the triangle of Landy, Templeman, and the band really changed. And that was 1984, because Templeman wasn't involved like he was in the first five. Johnny, what's your take on that? You subscribe to any of that?
Well, as a musician, like I said, as far as like the music business and making albums, making commercial music, really you have to stay on top of what's currently going on. Even though Eddie would say, "Oh, I don't listen to anything," he heard stuff. He had to,
Yeah.
right? To stay on that level, you have to be aware of everything that's going on, and you have to put out quality music to stay at that level. That's just how it is. Otherwise, you don't sell records, whatever, But yeah, I mean, sure, the dynamic changed when Sammy joined, became a different thing. You could argue, when Sammy joined, if it hadn't have been him, if it would have been somebody else, would the band have continued on? Personally, I don't think so.
Well, you don't
I think
think
if
Patty Smythe couldn't? The
No, God,
rumored
no.
Patty
When you hear the
Smythe?
names they were thinking about, I'm like, no.
No, there was something. Van Halen got very lucky when
Yeah.
Sammy joined
Yeah.
to get the success they had for those number of years with him. Because remember, when Gary joined, it was a different story.
Yeah.
Didn't work, unfortunately.
I actually love that record. It was just the production was horrible. The mic post, it sounded like demos, like bad demos to me. It wasn't finished to me. The Van Halen 3 record. Real quick to the Sammy Hagar stuff. I loved the Sammy thing. I remember everyone knew because I was a diehard Van Halen fanatic. Like that's all I listened to in high school. And I was in shop class, right? And we had to make those little painter hats. And you remember the painter hats, and then you would press them and come up with the design. So I drew this Van Halen, the VH with the wings, right? And then I had like a Phoenix Fire and Sammy Hagar on the back with VOA had just come out, Voice of America. And my buddies are like, oh, so you like, that Roth left, they broke up. I said, no. And they're like, well, who's going to replace him? And I looked at my hat, I go, the only person I can think of who might fit would be Hagar. And sure enough, that's what happened. And, they were a different band. I love both eras. Okay. I don't bash Sammy. I love the stuff with Sammy. The albums I really loved when they came out. As I grow older and I listen back, Eddie's, one of the points you raised was about, trying to make commercial music, and whether Eddie listened to other people. With both eras, he was true to himself. He was experimenting and growing. The thing about Van Halen was he never tried to be a commercial hit artist per se. That's why they brought Roth in, because he could make people dance and help with melodies and that sort of stuff and hooks in the vocal area, right? And so Hagar was good at that too. His lyrics leave wanting for me. He's a little workman-like, journeyman-like in his lyrics to me. I think Dave is a very underrated lyricist and really creative and unique in his lyrical content. But with Sammy, and as Eddie grew and his tone chasing went on with all his amps and guitars, the other thing that changed was his playing. Now, I'm not a guitar player, but he started, instead of like attacking aggressively his chords and chunky, it was more like picked chords and like lighter. Do you know what I mean? Like listen to Pound Cake versus you know, the earlier
Yeah.
stuff, right? And
That
so it's a more
that
mature playing, I guess. He was probably bored and tired of doing that thing. And he was just experimenting and wanted to learn and play their stuff. His soloing also became less over the top. And he would try and really, I feel like in most songs, he always had a couple showcases, but he would just try and play for the song. And that's where you could hear his more Clapton influences to me was in the Hagar era stuff
mm-hmm.
on his
Well
lead
said.
playing.
Well said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he grew up. You know,
Yeah.
they grow up. Johnny.
Well, it's like Edward would say this. Why, you know, stuff that he already did, why would he go back? You don't go backwards.
No,
When you get to a certain level of success, you don't go the opposite direction. You
no.
move forward.
Right.
That's what Van Halen did. You can argue, the music got soft, whatever. If you look at the era of when those albums came out, they were perfect
Yeah,
for those eras.
absolutely. They're great records. They're different. Quit comparing them. They're totally different singers, vocally, lyrically, stage present wise, personality wise. And that is such a big part of any band. The only band who's never changed, really, they've had two singers and they've been successful, is
Don't say
AC/DC.
it. Don't say it.
AC/DC. They're very different, the two singers, but the players aren't as wide ranging as the guys in Van Halen, meaning Alex and Eddie, right? And so they kind of stay more in a certain box than Van Halen did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting you say that because we just had
And I
our
love
top.
AC/DC, so I'm not
We just
bagging
had
on
our
them.
top 15 AC/DC episode. And we had Jesse Fink on, the author
Mhm.
of the Notes from the Highway, Bond, and the three AC/DC books. And out of 15 songs, we had three guests. One came from the Brian era. The rest was all Bond, and it was like
Interesting.
going on Bond. We call them Bondisms, and it was sort of like how the Roth is in terms of the lyrics and the life experiences and the wording of that.
Yeah.
Like you take a song like Romeo Delight, just
Oh, great song.
absolutely just off the hook. Now musically, yes, but lyrically, just something completely different.
Yeah.
Take your whiskey home. They're telling stories,
Yeah.
and not saying that the Sammy stuff doesn't tell stories, but it's just different. And by the time Hagar came around, it's 1986. Eddie's wearing parachute pants.
Right.
It's everyone's wearing floral colors.
Right.
Miami Vice is popular. Van Halen started in the 70s, and they remained a 70s band
I agree.
really through the early 80s. It took the 80s 2-3 years, maybe 4 years to really turn the corner over the 70s. In the band, it was the sort of the same way. And so you're right. They were a representation of that time. Now, guys, let me ask you, do you feel listening back to like an album like OU812, did it stand the test of time? Is a song like Sucker and a Three Piece, is it any better today than it was 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Is it a better song?
No, it did it
You
stand the
mean?
best of
Or
time. Is like, oh man, what were they doing there? Where if you go back and listen to, you know, Fools from Women and Children First, where it's still sounds fresh in my ears. Or
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
Sucker and a Three Piece. I'm just using that as an example.
That's yeah. That's that. Well, it's funny you bring up couple songs from Women and Children First. That's the one Van Halen album that if it wasn't for all the reverb on it, you really couldn't date it.
Hmm.
It's production wise, it's timeless.
Yeah.
Everything else is a product of that time where you can listen. Oh, 0812. Oh, listen to that. That does sound late 80s. You can totally tell the production, right? And that's really, I mean, it's a package of the production of the song. Uh, Not so much the songwriting, not really in rock, but in other genres, you could argue, uh, you can tell when something was done, and is after, the thing is nowadays music well, years and years ago, a friend of mine told me when I first got into rock music, a friend of mine told me, who's a musician, he's a guitarist. He said, rock is dead. And this was in 1987. He told me
Sure.
that.
They've been saying it
He's
for
like,
decades.
he's like, rock is dead and albums are meant to be disposable, is what he told me. You buy a record, you listen to it, you move on, is what he said. And as an artist, that's kind of how it is. You create something, you live with it, you move on to the next. Whether you're successful with the next thing, it's a lot of different. You can't, you really can't predict. You can't
No.
predict what's going to be a hit.
Right.
Although there are people that do write hits and that's all they do.
Yeah.
It's a very, let's just say, well, take it back to Van Halen. Those albums were perfect for every year they came out. Oh, that was great for that. That was great for that. Whatever. But like you were asking though, Sucker and a Three-Piece, Oh Eat One Too, does that live up to today? Like I said, for me, very special album for me.
Yeah.
Production wise, now it's a bit flat. It's a bit thin, but it was a pop produced record for the time. Compare that to other albums at the time, and they're similar. Although it does show its age.
Yeah, you're right. And, it's not fair because your Sucker and a Three-Piece is my Fools. It could do no wrong. And, because you grew up on, 1988, like you said, the first time you saw him. And
Yeah.
I happened to see that tour too. I saw him at Syracuse.
Monsters of Rock.
No, the winter tour. Saw him up at the Carrier Dome.
Yeah.
And
it was basically the same show, but it was just a
Yeah.
different tour.
Elon, you ever have a chance to see Van Halen?
Me?
Yeah.
Not with Roth in his heyday. I saw the '08 tour and I was already cringing. Like he wasn't cringy from 78 to 80, maybe up through Skyscraper. And then he started creeping into cringe territory, like with A Little Ain't Enough. And I saw every tour. The Eat 'Em and Smile tour is my favorite show of all time. I saw that at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. I had like 6th row front and center seats, mind-blowing show. Saw Van Halen on the 5150 tour is my second favorite show. Saw the Van Halen every tour with Sammy when they were releasing albums. I didn't see the '04 reunion tour. After I saw Roth in '08, I didn't want to go see Van Halen again as old men. Sorry. But to answer your question, two points. Johnny made a great point about, as the artist, when you record an album, it's a snapshot in time, a little part of your life. And of course, you're going to move on. You're going to tour with it. You're going to live it. And you're going to have to revisit certain songs every tour, right? Following that, because they're hits or whatever. And then the next album is your next snapshot. Famously, they say you have your whole life to write your first record, and then you only have 6 to 9 months to write every record afterwards, right? So they're never as good, usually, because you're picking the best of the best that you wrote for your whole life, right? So if I look back at, and most of the Roth catalogs, a lot of it came from the first sessions, the first 2 sessions, right? At least 50% of the material after Van Halen 2 was still from those first sessions and their early days. They modified it. They played with it. They took parts of different songs and mashed them together to create something newish, but it was still that original bunch of songs, right? When you look at the Hagar era stuff, and I pulled up OU812 because I couldn't remember the track list. For me, my favorite stuff, like Good Enough is a great track, a great album opener. But a lot of 5150, I don't like to judge because a lot of that stuff was sort of written with Dave in mind, from what I've been told. And not all of it, but a lot of it. So Good Enough, Get Up, Summer Nights, obviously that was the Steinberger guitar song, so that had a lot to do with it. And those songs carry well for me. Off of OU812, I think Finish What You Started is just a classic. His finger-picking bluesy stuff is just a great song, period. I love like Source of Infection, but AFU, I love those high energy Van Halen boogie songs. You know what I mean? Sinner Swing from back in the day. My 2 favorite records, by the way, are Fair Warning and probably Women and Children First. And I love all 6. I love the first two with Sammy best. Um, Balance has a couple moments on it, and I liked for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. It was good. It was just sort of plodding rhythmically for me, a lot of that record. Um, but I still loved it at the time. But now when I go back and listen to it, and like you said, production wise, the 5150 and OU812 records are definitely thin and tinny. Alex is still using his electronic drums on those. I think the sound got better when Andy Johns came on board, which was for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. And then, they were more modern in their recording by Balance, right? And they tried to be more grungy, like I say grungy, but that darker detune, Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, and the Twister song. What was that one?
Humans Being.
Thank you, Humans Being, right? That jung, 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 right? And so there's some great playing on Van Halen 3, man. I'm telling you, there's some great rhythmic playing and lead playing. He was pretty motivated, I felt like. I just thought the production sucked. And same with we haven't talked about it, but A Different Kind of Truth. My biggest problem with that record, I think there's some great songs. The production on it is really it again feels like demos, not finished to me, which is so disappointing, especially with those great background vocals that were so bright and lifted that LA California sound that you referenced a couple minutes ago. That Van Halen was the sound of summer for most of us, right? In both eras. I remember when Why Can't This Be Love came out. We're all waiting the new album with Sammy Hagar, blah blah blah. And then I was disappointed, but I also liked it because I wanted a rocker. And then and I'm like, but it sounded like summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The different kind of truth. I loved it. I love the production on it.
Oh, you do? Okay. I love the record.
Yeah.
I love the songs.
I think Eddie's playing on that is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think Al's playing on that. It's a remote album. I think
and Roth's vocals at this point.
No, on the album, it's good. I loved it. It was just he sounded good. Roth never had a problem in the studio, but
his low end was good. His high end has been gone for 20 years. So I love his screams and all that, and he can't do that anymore. And he tries, and he sounds like he's going through. He's like strained and nasally. So,
well, the last thing I want to touch on before we get out of here is Johnny. What's your take on the Sammy and the not the reunion, the end of the career tour that he did last summer, and now he's starting a residency? I didn't go see it, but did you see it, and what'd you think of it?
I saw it.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw them in Concord, California, and then I saw them a couple days later in Irvine, which would have been considered Los Angeles. I thought they were great shows. I've always been a huge fan of Sammy, his voice. Of course, Michael Anthony. That you combined Sammy Hagar's vocal with Mike's vocal.
Oh yeah.
It's classic Van Hagar vocal is what it is. I hear them singing together. It takes me back to being 12 years old because that's my era.
Yeah.
Right. And then you got Satriani on guitar. He's Joe Satriani. He's another one of those guys. Van Halen, Vise, Satriani. There's only a handful of people that are these just guitar gods.
Yeah.
Did I like the show? I thought the shows were great. I thought Satriani, being Satriani, doing the songs, it's perfect. The last thing I want to see is some guy up there trying to be Eddie Van Halen jumping around. No.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah. I saw the show in Indy. Did they have Jason drumming, or we had Kenny Aronoff at our show?
We had Jason at both shows.
How was that? I would have preferred, I know Kenny's great and he was fine, but I would have preferred to see Jason just because he was with them longer, like playing together for.
Yeah. Well, technically Aronoff was with them too, with Chickenfoot.
That's true.
Right.
The shows are great. Sammy's voice is finally starting to show his age for the first time ever, because he's carried his voice for so long, probably longer than any rock singer I've heard, like where his high end, everything was been there. And it's only been the last couple of years it's starting to get a little frayed around the edges at the high end, but not bad. But I'm just saying he's showing his human for the first time to me. But the only disappointment I had in the show was great. The set list was great. Ours was cut off due to lightning storms. Unfortunately, we had like a 30-minute delay, an hour delay, and they had to end the show because of lightning. But my only complaint was when the press tour started, Sammy definitely pushed that this was an Eddie tribute. When you go to the show, it wasn't that. They did the montage, the video montage to start the show, which was cool. After that, they barely mentioned Eddie. I think Mike and Sammy maybe pointed up once, but I felt like it felt a little disingenuous to me. Loved hearing the songs, loved hearing the older stuff from 5150. I know they haven't played in a long time. Hearing 5150 was amazing. For example, the song 5150, Summer Nights, hearing that stuff was great because it's been a while, right? And the show was fantastic. Everybody sounded great, but that was my only problem. I felt like they should have gone in. Now, maybe I heard the argument they weren't legally allowed to. Like if they pushed that too hard, maybe Alex is going to come after them or something. I don't know if that's true, but that's the one argument I heard as to why they didn't. Like they didn't have the rights to the photos and videos and all that stuff, even though they're in them, or Sammy's in them, and Mike is too, but we know Mike doesn't have a lot of say in the business or power in the business stuff, right? So what do you think about that argument that that's why they didn't?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, like, the music business, it's like
It's a
it's a
mother.
business.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's a business is what it is.
Totally.
And a lot of people complain. Oh, Sammy, all he does is talk about Van Halen. Well, he was in Van Halen.
He was part of Van Halen.
And unfortunately, like I said, if Sammy hadn't have joined Van Halen when he did, I don't think they would have gone on. Sammy really saved that band, like it or not.
Yeah.
So he totally has a right to sing those songs.
I agree.
Was it an Eddie tribute? I mean, kind of, but not really.
I don't think he ever from the beginning said it was a Eddie tribute as much as a Van Halen tribute, in the sense that they were gonna be playing some of that music again. And I do think the powers that be did get in touch with the Hagar camp. I don't know anything, but like Johnny said, it is the music business. And so if you're gonna be making money off whatever, there's probably stipulation about the amount of screen time and the advertising and all that. So
because then it didn't play Mean Street. Famously they kind of played the lick on Howard Stern. I think all of us old heads were like, oh, I would love to hear Sammy sing Mean Street or something. But he played the same 5 or 6 songs he's always played.
Why would he play Mean Street? He never did it when he was in the band. There were certain Van
Halen
I know
that, but
the teasing played.
The teasing and the Howard Stern thing, and like the fact that they were saying this is a tribute to Ed, like, and he kind of said, oh, we're going to play stuff you haven't heard in a while and like older tracks. He said it. He absolutely did. So I know a lot of Van Halen fans felt misled that he was going to maybe break open some of the Roth-era stuff he's never done before, or maybe let Mike sing. But it was ain't talking about love, Panama Jump, Running with the Devil, maybe, and that's about it.
But it was cool if you're the Van Hagar audience. 5150, Summer Nights.
And I love that. I'm not saying that. I agree.
I don't need Sammy going back into the Roth catalog that he never sang the first time around to pull it out. If you're going to go back into the Van Halen catalog, go into your catalog that he did with the band. That's cool as hell.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's the thing.
I love that stuff.
Elan, we'll save this for a rock and roll detention next week. I'm going to have you back. But our guest, Johnny Beane from Johnny Beane TV. Johnny, where can people get in touch with you, and let's plug your brand?
I am basically everywhere there is online. Just Google my name. There it is. But yeah, YouTube, X, Facebook. I do video gaming on Twitch, every night. So.
And we're I don't know if it's happened yet, but we're pushing to get Johnny Beane TV over 13,000 subscribers. Did we reach it yet?
I don't know. I haven't looked.
So you got one more at least.
I don't know where. Let me see. Where am I?
Well, our show research team just piped into my ear. They're as we talk, you're trying to get there.
I'm at 12,538.
All right.
Okay, so the goal is 13,000 by February 1st, by Valentine's Day. Let's give Johnny our love. So,
all right. All my friends out there who are Van Halen fans, go follow him, man. Go subscribe. It's a great show. You can find us at www.whatshotitsc.com or at What's Hot in the Strip Clubs podcast or at Eddie.Ilan Fong. Check out my Spotify playlist, Eddie.Ilan Fong's Off the Charts 2025, and Panda Bamboo Tracks, TRAX on Spotify.
Beautiful. Guys, have a great day. Johnny, again, be safe out in California. Enjoy NAMM, and we'll have you back on. Elan, thank you. For my two friends, I'm the Vernomatic, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.